Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest in the Phase 3 Meet series. We've done quite a few of these now, so you should all know the format. Very much a payroll bias in today's episode. Delighted to be joined by Paul Gibbons, who is a tutor for the CIPP, the Chartered Institute of Payroll Professionals, and is also the COO, Chief Operating Officer, at Paydashboard. Paul, thank you very much for joining us. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
No, my pleasure. Absolutely is. So we've got a lot to get through today. Like I said at the start, there's certainly a payroll bias. So why don't you start by just telling us all a little bit more about Paydashboard and what it is you guys do?
Yeah, so Paydashboard provides a smart slip technology alongside the payslip. So we take a standard payslip and we put some smart interfaces around that. So it becomes an interactive tool for an end user. So we educate the individual about their tax code. We talk to them about some allowances and stuff that they're entitled to claim from the government. We present their payslip data to them in a different way so that they can visualize that in different aspects. It's completely out there on the web, so anyone can access it on their mobile phones or whatever when they're on the go. But yeah, for the employee, it's really about extending that journey for them. So rather than the payslip being the endpoint of the payday, we talk about the payday experience and the employment experience and how from the moment the individual receives their payslip, how they can go on a different journey in terms of being able to understand their data and then what's going on a lot more than what they currently do.
Okay, so I suppose it falls under kind of digitizing payroll. And what benefits does that kind of have, digitizing payroll for both employees and, of course, the payroll teams?
Yeah, so I don't think that payday should just be about delivering the bottom line in terms of what an individual is being paid. It's about making sure that you're engaged with the employee along that journey. I think that to be able to engage an individual and help them with some financial wellness alongside their payslip is incredibly powerful. With everything that's going on in the world right now, we're looking at every penny that's coming into our accounts and making sure it's being spent in the right way, and almost tightening our belts, even though we've had nowhere to go and spend money for quite a little while. I think we're all probably sitting there quite cautiously, wanting to know what's going to happen. So, when an individual gets paid, yes, there is the bottom line, but taking them on that financial wellness journey, I think, is important. And digitalizing payroll is much more than just delivering an e-payslip. It's an experience that an individual wants. We walk around with our smartphones, we do our banking on our smartphones, we basically pretty much do all of our life now on our smartphones because, again, nowhere's open to be able to go and speak to an individual, really. Absolutely. So, it's about how you can take someone on that journey, really. And I think that through digitalizing payroll, you can help employers to connect with their staff, you can help individuals understand their pay more. For me, I'm quite lucky. I teach payroll, so I can write on the back of a scrap piece of paper or whatever a tax calculation. Not that interesting, but I understand all those things. So when someone talks to me about certain things, I completely understand it. But my family and brothers and friends and stuff, they don't understand. So being able to make that a digital experience from an individual, I think, is really powerful these days.
Oh, it's certainly the way forward, isn't it? I remember receiving my first payslip and not having a clue what it is I'm actually looking at. Straight away, you're drawn to net pay, but understanding that, and sometimes, like you say, just a simple chart or a graph or something like that, does help you. I love the fact you touched upon financial well-being and wellness, because that's obviously in the current climate, that's huge, but even outside of that, what do you think employers can actually do to improve financial wellness? And what part does payroll have to play in this?
I think it's about them engaging with the worker to understand, as much as they can as to what's going on. With our platform, we've got a lot of guidance articles on there about different bits and pieces that can help an individual. And I think that an employer being able to just tap into those statistics to understand that so many percentage of their staff have access to a piece of guidance about how they can claim more tax back or something. The employer can just help them by just delivering their payslip with Paydashboard, and I think that really does give the employee some comfort. Obviously, there's a line there where the employee doesn't necessarily want to share all of their financial situation, but we all know that the impact of everyday life has an effect on what we do in work. So if the employer can support an individual by giving them access to different content, especially when they're most engaged as to when they're receiving their payslip, then hopefully that will help an individual to be able to be in a better position.
No, absolutely. There's so much innovation happening at the moment in payroll, and it's great to see. Another thing, obviously, that's kind of in the news is pay on demand.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that? So obviously, pay on demand, for those who don't know, is when employees could kind of draw down on their salaries kind of pre-payday. So what I'm kind of in two minds about it, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on it first, please, Paul.
Yeah, I've probably got two, if I wear different hats. So as a payroll professional sitting there running a payroll, I think, how much extra work is this going to create for me?
Yeah.
And as an employer, looking after staff and wanting to make sure that they can access funds when they really need it. I think they're useful if they're used in the right way. I think that you got to be careful that you're not just really turning payday lending into a payday advance. But
Yeah.
I think in certain industries where you want to encourage people to do overtime, for example, there's a lot of shift work and shifts available. Then saying, well, any extra shifts you do over your standard hours, you can claim in advance, because basically we all do overtime because we want the cash, and getting the cash in 6 weeks' time might not really help us with our immediate issue. Yeah. So if I was an employer that had to fulfill shifts, for example, and I said, well, when you fulfill your shift and do that, you can have your pay for that pretty much instantly. Then I think that it's a real bonus there in terms of incentivizing, engaging, helps the employer to be able to resource the business when it's needed, but also the employee gets an advance on overtime, not an advance on their current pay. But we all know that horrible moment when the washing machine breaks down and we turn around and think, oh my God, how are we going to replace the washing machine? It's 2 days before Christmas. So, it does break down some of the structure we have in this country. There is a fixed payday and that's it, and they're the rules we're going to follow. So yeah, I think as long as it's managed in an ethical kind of way, then I think that it's not a bad solution to be out there.
Okay, I think there's a big element of responsibility there as well, isn't there, for the employer, that you're not, so for example, December and January pay is a perfect example. Everybody likes to pay pre-Christmas, whether this year I think it's the 18th or 17th, whatever it is. But then there's a hell of a wait for payday in January, isn't there? 6 weeks. And it's almost that responsibility that you have. Maybe you pay a little bit earlier or part of the wages earlier. And it's also a lot of trust from the employee as well, so that they're not just drawing their salary for the sake of drawing it, spending it all, and having to wait 6-7 weeks before they're actually paid again.
Yeah, definitely. I think obviously Christmas is that time of the year when paydays do get moved. Yeah. For me, I always try and encourage employers to try and bring their January payday forward. Because February is naturally a shorter month.
Shorter month anyway.
If you can space out the gap between December, January, February, then that kind of works. But my issues over a year financially might be different to the person I sit next to. So having access to be able to draw on funds when I need it in my situation helps my financial wellness. But there is a huge responsibility from the employer to get the balance right. Otherwise, you potentially cause more of an issue than trying to solve it. So, it definitely needs to be handled delicately, I'd say.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we can't have a conversation around payroll in the current climate and not mention the F word. So not mention the F word. So furlough. What impact do you think furlough has had on payrollers generally, and how can a solution like Paydashboard actually help?
Yeah, so firstly, I think payrollers are generally the unsung heroes of the pandemic. Incredibly biased, not taking any credit away from the NHS at all, but we have actually helped the government to fund an unemployment type thing,
Absolutely.
if you wish to call it that, and really without us, going above and beyond, the nation would have been in a real crisis situation, I think, and. We've had to adapt to things overnight with changes in legislation, and payday doesn't stop just because there's been a change from the rules that were announced the day before. So we've had to adapt and keep going. So I would say the pressure on payroll this year has been huge, probably more than ever before. But we're grafters, and we battle through, and we'll come out the other side and look back, and we'll reminisce on those days. But for Paydashboard, I mean, what we did in terms of being able to help and support payrollers through that situation is we built a COVID dashboard within a couple of days of things going and being announced, and that allowed agencies and payroll bureaus and payroll professionals to be able to look across their client base and see real trends that are going on. So they were able to drill down into mass data and find out information that was relevant to them to be able to have meaningful conversations. Some of the things that we found is that we did a recent poll of accounting practices and found 42% of them are now investing in technology to better support the payroll teams in challenging times. So they're looking for different ways that they can bring in technology to support what may be now a completely remote workforce where it was never before. We also found that 31% said they'd make changes this year or next to that technology, which is huge, really. And that only 17% of those surveys said that their current setup was good enough. So although they've had this huge demand on time and effort to be able to deliver payroll, I think it's allowed people in our industry to sit back and look at technology and look at something like Paydashboard and say, well, is this a tool that's really going to help me in delivering a really good service, but also to help us with the struggles that we now have as a business that have been brought on by the pandemic. So furlough has been good and bad all at the same time.
The limelight is certainly on payrollers, isn't it? Or certainly has been for the last few months, and deservedly so. Deservedly so as well. That little bit of recognition always helps, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. My brother works in payroll, and I've worked in payroll. I've got lots of friends in the industry, and it has been a hard slog for them. And you kind of get to Christmas and quite grateful for the break, but if there's no break this year, it's just full on. I keep going.
Every day is just like the next, isn't it? At the moment, it's bizarre. Yeah,
exactly. But as I say, they're built with tough things, the payroll folks. So I'm sure they'll be fine.
Absolutely. So going back to Paydashboard a little bit, do you think I remember a few years ago, online pay slips was like, whoa, big developments and innovation, and the payroll industry has changed forever. Are solutions like Paydashboard the future now then in terms of payroll communication?
I think
is the online payslip dead?
I think it's generally how people's terminology of online is generally what I would question there. I mean, there was a report in 2019 from the CIPP that said that actually 86% of people want to get their payslip online. In our mind, Paydashboard just take the online journey further, and we add a lot more value. It's fine to present a document online, and if you think of banking, you used to just get your bank statement online, And now when you go online or through the app, you get your widgets and it tells you your ins and your outs, and tells you where you could save money and your upcoming direct debits. And so Paydashboard do a similar kind of experience around payday. You know, we're telling you where changes have happened in your pay, and that we've noticed your tax code has changed, and you know, we've noticed that this has changed, and are you aware of this? And so, you know, it's making it more of an experience, I think. And I think what people value from Paydashboard is the value that we give. So, you know, everyone has to deliver a payslip. It's legislation, you know, that can tick a box, but wanting to take that journey further and give the user access to more meaningful content, I think is the future. We all want more information. We all want it at a touch of a fingertip. And I think that is generally the way that things are going.
And to make what I think is quite a good comparison is the kind of challenger banks, the app-based banks at the moment, like of Starling and Monzo is another one, and there's quite a few now. And you know, like you said earlier, you can have a savings pot, you can do this, you can do that. It just breaks it down, a nice, friendly, easy to use, you know, app kind of interface, and it's so much easier on the eye, number one, but the data is there, isn't it? And it's so much easier to understand. It sounds like a very similar kind of thing to what you guys are doing.
Yeah, I mean, we love to abbreviate everything in payroll. Every word that you can imagine is abbreviated, and to us in the profession, we understand what they mean, but the everyday person on the street, they have no idea what these abbreviations mean. And just putting that around the payslip, for example, just help someone that's struggling to understand. So they feel that their employer has given them the attention they need. They've helped them to understand just through using the right technology.
Absolutely.
You know, it hasn't been resource heavy in terms of phone calls having to happen. It's just having good technology at the forefront that can help you.
And does Paydashboard work sit on top of any payroll solution?
Yeah, so we're completely agnostic, so we can just click into any payroll solution that's out there. And you know, if you run a bureau or an accounting firm, then it allows you to have one delivery mechanism across the client base. So if you run multiple technologies internally, then it allows you to just have one user interface. So you're not having to go with multiple portals. And also for those employers that, you know, run their payrolls in-house, that it can be completely white labeled, so it can look very corporate. It ties in with your, you know, existing marketing activities and things. But clicks into any payroll software out there.
Yeah, I mean, I've only seen it briefly, but it looks fantastic. I've got to say, I'm a very visual person generally anyway, and I do like that kind of stuff, but I think it looks fantastic. Final question in this kind of part of the interview. We've talked a lot about payroll innovations, you know, and what we've seen over the last few years, from online pay slips to financial wellness kind of tied in. What do you think we're likely to see innovation-wise and change-wise in payroll in the coming years?
Well, I think with so many staff working remotely, there's a need to be able to deliver content in a different way. At the moment, I'm sure you or I know that, you know, you open your emails at home or whatever, and you're just bombarded with email after email now, as a way of being able to communicate with an individual. But I do think that things will change, and you know, there's going to be a heavier focus on financial wellness. And for us, we're really focused on that. We've always had the thought of trying to make a person's net pay go further, whether that is educating them about their tax code, telling them about how they can get a marriage allowance, being able to tie in real powerful financial wellness alongside that. So when a person's looking at their payslip thinking, okay, how am I going to make this go for the whole month? And I've got car insurances, I've got bills to pay this month I didn't have last month, you know, how am I going to get through the month with that? So, you know, we've done some recent collaborations that we've put out on socials. So we have a relationship with Perks, and we've launched a product called Perkwell, and we're expanding our industry partners to allow us to be able to offer a really powerful financial wellbeing service alongside Paydashboard. So watch this space. And,
exclusive.
It is exclusive. Yeah, it'll be coming out in the new year. So but I think that, for someone that's sat in payroll for 15 years and been around it, I think it is something new and something meaningful and can add real value to any employer.
I mean, that looks fantastic, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what that translates to in terms of offering and solution. Just on financial wellness, I personally think they should teach it in schools. I've got my eldest, he's kind of year 9 now, approaching GCSEs. They don't teach anything like that. It's a half decent school. We were never taught anything at school about that, and I think it should be part of the curriculum. It shouldn't just be you get a job and all of a sudden, if you're fortunate enough to have an organization who invests in a solution like yours or something else, then brilliant. But not everybody does. Not all industries and all companies, and there needs to be a basic element at least taught at schools.
Yeah, definitely. We have people coming into the workplace now and have done for a few years that have never received a paper bank statement, never received paper documents.
Yeah.
Everything is done online. Everything is done through an app or a web browser or whatever. And that level of understanding that would have been there, through different jobs from years ago is diminishing. And, people do need to understand there is a lot of pressure on young people these days.
Yep.
With social media and all the rest of the things, trying to keep up to date, that it's important, I think, to have that level of understanding, and it could be fairly basic. It doesn't have to be, I'm going to teach you about all the FDA regulations, but just a general understanding of how your pay is made up, and are you on the right tax? Did you know about this for pensions? And just change the mindset slightly, I think, is really key. So I agree. Teach them in school.
There was a clip you might have seen. I think it might have been on Twitter or Facebook or something, of this kid in America who was celebrating his first pay slip, and he was getting his gross and his net confused. And when he realised he'd been taxed and stuff, his parents, must be his father's in the background, laughing his head off, and the kid's face just drops for that same reason. He didn't know, did he? Obviously.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's scary when the numbers on one side and nearly as bad as the numbers on the other. So, if you can help someone to understand a bit more, then it's only going to empower them, right?
Absolutely. This is really good stuff from you, Paul. Honestly, there's so much informative stuff content here. But we're going to move on to the quick fire round. Again, those of you who kind of watch this regularly will know the type of questions I ask here. But again, I'm sticking with payroll on this, Paul. So you can answer in as much detail or as you like. Yeah. So let's go. A few questions here. What's the best thing about payroll?
The constant changes, or the need to be perfect. I don't think there's ever a dull day. It's always exciting. As much as payroll can be boring, it's exciting if you're in the midst of it.
Absolutely. Okay. Worst thing about payroll?
Deadlines. There's always a deadline. Payday, payslip day, payment day, whatever it is, there's always a deadline. It never goes away. That's the worst, I'd say.
Okay. What's your favorite payroll resource in terms of somewhere you go online or an app or, whatever it may be?
I mean, I am one just to navigate to the HMRC. I think, to see what's out there, it's government.
Yeah.
But in terms of trying to get some clarity around it, I do think the CIPP do a good job in terms of translating that back to the everyday user. Yep. And that's not, because I teach for them. I've been a member for forever since I've been in payroll, but I do think they do help to translate some of the difficulties into everyday language and relate it to people. So they're probably my go-to, really.
Okay, good. Next question. What's the best payroll software you've seen?
Oh, this is
there going to be a free plug for somebody?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's lots of new ones coming to the marketplace at the moment, and it really depends on where you sit. Paysurf are making big step forwards in the bureau space with cloud solutions, as with KeyPay and Brain Payroll. In the SME market, there's different solutions. You've got your BrightPay and your MoneySoft, and so it really depends on where you sit. But for me, I just think, well, you've got to work out what works best for you as a processor and pick that.
Yeah. Have you got any splinters on your backside there? Yeah. Sitting on that fence, Paul.
On the fence here. Look and feel.
We'll accept that. We'll accept that. We'll accept that.
Move on.
Okay. Should payroll sit in HR or finance?
I think payroll should have its own division. If I'm honest, I think it's that strategic to business now that it shouldn't necessarily sit under either. You get very different results depending on where payroll sits. If it sits in HR, it's very people orientated, and if it sits in finance, it's very money orientated. But I think the stuff that a payroll professional has to go through now, and that you can get a chartered status as a payroll professional, that there should be some consideration whether actually it's a standout function on its own, just fed from different areas. So I'm kind of on the fence, but I just champion payroll. So fly that payroll flag.
Okay, cool. And you kind of answered the last question, but I'll ask it to you anyway. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being low, 10 being high, of course, how much do you love HMRC?
Let's put them somewhere around the middle, because people shout the screen at me otherwise. I think they've got, it's a difficult job. Legislation is boring. Yeah. We've all got different quirks and different things that we all want to answer to our specific need. But no one can answer a question specifically to your needs without a lot of background information. So I think we have to give them some slack. They've done a lot of improvement with updating systems and stuff over the recent years. So it's getting better, but they could always do more.
Brilliant. Okay. Thank you so much for your time. Honestly, I've really enjoyed this 20-30 minutes, however long it's been. It's been very informative. And guys, check out Paydashboard. Go to their website, Google them, get in contact with Paul if you have any queries or if you want a demo or whatever it may be. And of course, for a lot more payroll resource, check out Phase 3, our website as well. And thank you all for watching. Paul, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, guys.
Bye-bye.